everybody, I'm Cat Bennett and this is my class on drawing faces. First, I want to remind you that everybody can draw, even if you haven't drawn since grade school. It's for everybody. No special talent is needed, it's inside all of us. And it's a wonderful practice for coming into the present moment, relaxing, having fun. Also for thinking in different ways, because it's nonverbal, it gives you a lot of ideas. So the class is divided into 3 sections. The first, we are going to draw from imagination, very simply. And in the second, we're going to draw from photographs using contour drawing, which is just the outlines. And in the third, we're going to introduce some simple shading techniques using colored pencil or crayons, whatever you have on hand. So I hope you enjoy the classes. You can watch the whole video and then return to it and do different parts at different times if you like. You'll have it as a resource to come back to if you need to see again how I did it. And I hope that you'll feel free to make mistakes, go over the edge. Mistakes are absolutely essential to learning and gaining confidence in our hand. Don't hold back, and also try to have a very positive attitude about the work that you do. We don't need to criticize ourselves ever, but to affirm ourselves for giving it a good try and looking and seeing what we like in our drawing and what we might bring forward into the next drawing. In my experience, in truth, it's all about the doing. Showing up, doing, even for a few minutes every day makes a big difference. So I hope that you can practice your drawing in that way with a good positive attitude, the sense that it's fun, and seeing what happens. Here are the drawing materials that you're going to need for the class. Ordinary computer paper, nothing fancy, or a sketchbook if you have one. A pencil, usually 4B, 6B, the softer leads are better. You don't need one. You can always use colored pencils if you don't have a soft lead pencil. Markers, just a couple of colors, or crayons, a couple of colors. And it doesn't matter if you have all of these things, any one of them will do. For our subject matter, we're going to use photographs. And you can find them in magazines and newspapers, or you can print things out from your computer. To get started, I want us to look at a schematic drawing of the head so we can internalize the placement of the features of the face. So halfway between the head, the top of the head and the chin are the eyes. Sometimes we put them way up here, but they're really more like halfway down the face. Halfway between the eyes and the chin are the bottom of the nose, and halfway between the bottom of the nose and the chin are the lips. And the tops of the ears are kind of aligned with the tops of the eyes. Of course, there's individual variations, but I think if we can internalize the basic placement of things, it helps us when we draw, because we're drawing not just from looking, but also from memory and an internal sense of where things are. So this is a good thing to keep in mind, and you might even want to make your own little schematic drawing just to remind you and to get it embedded in your hand. Let's start by making a page full of ovals. You can make this just in one color. Again, I used a marker, but you can use whatever you like, colored pencil or pencil. So now we have a page of ovals, and we can begin to have fun and just put on some eyes, ears, nose, mouth, hair, and so on. So I'm going to try doing eyes in different ways. Sometimes in cartoons we just have dots for eyes. So you can experiment with that. And I'm making the nose, ears, and everything in faces is all about the details. Some of us have bigger ears than other people. Hair. Now I can make the eyes in a more oval shape. And if she has hair, then we probably won't see her eyes. And we can do bigger eyes and different shapes of ovals because people have different shapes of faces. They have different noses, so there's a wider nose and thicker lips and bigger eyes, as I said, and maybe just short hair. And maybe this person has a mustache and glasses. Maybe she has long hair. You can begin to play and experiment, and she has a narrow nose. And see all the possibilities for making faces. This is really just a fun exercise and super fun to do with kids. You can trade off. Kids can do part of the features, you can do part, or you can just play yourself. Really, these are kind of cartoon-like drawings, but they give us a good idea of all the different ways people's faces are made and what we might add to them. And go back and look what you have, because here's one. I did not do the eyebrows, or maybe her hair could come down there. So after we do a drawing, we can go back and add more details and just see, is it working or do we want to change it up a little bit? So I would do several pages of these and just have fun with it and just get into the flow of trying to play with making faces. And we're going to start next to work with photographs. Here are some very simple drawings that I did based on photographs. I had a subject in a photograph for each of them. But you can see how simple and stylized they are. This is called a contour drawing. We're only drawing the outlines and we're not doing shading whatsoever. I'm going to begin now to draw this actress. Her name is Beanie Feldstein. And I'm going to start with her eyes. We can start on the exterior and make the shape of the face and then work in, but I'm going to start with the interior features and work out. Either way is fine, and you can experiment and try working in both ways to see how it works for you. So I'm going to do her eyes, and I'm looking at the photograph, and then I'm drawing over here, and I'm looking over here. Sometimes people look and draw at the same time. They look over here and keep their eyes more on the photograph. Sometimes you try to coordinate your eye with your hand, but I find for myself, I'm more effective if I look and then I draw. And there's a crease above her eye, there's one below, and her eyebrows have a certain shape. So we're just using line. This is again called a contour drawing, a very simple way to draw and get started with playing with getting likenesses and your own style of drawing. In the end, it really is about your own style of drawing, your feelings, your interpretation of things, rather than, getting it absolutely accurate. We have cameras for that now, so we don't need to worry so much about accuracy as the old portrait painters did. So again, everybody's mouth is a different shape. I'm going to now she has teeth, but I'm not going to emphasize those, because if we do, it just draws too much attention to them. Now I'm going to her chin. Where does it fall and where does her jawline go? Up there. I'm not going to draw her hand, for the hands are quite difficult. And for the purposes of this demonstration, I think it would be a little time consuming. Her hairline comes down. I'm going to look at where her cheekbone comes. And then I'm going to do her little bit of her neck, her shoulders. And she's got a necklace. I'll just do it quickly like that. And now I'm going to do her hair. And again, we can indicate things with just a few lines. And the same on this side, because her hand is obscuring things, I'm just going to make them up. In this third section of the class, we're going to work a little bit with shading and maybe making our drawings a little bit more complex. The one on the left, as you can see in my sketchbook, is just me playing around. And the one on the right is using a photograph, and I'm using crayons in order to indicate color. I've just made up a colored background. I used just marks to indicate her sweater, and I used some marks to indicate shading and hair color. I'm not being literal at all, but just a hint of color on her lips. Sometimes a little shows us a lot. So that's one simple way of working with simple materials like crayons. Here's another drawing done in the same way, again with crayons, and I've mixed two colors. So I started with the pink, but I went over with the purple. You can mix colors in crayons. Here, the shading I applied with soft crayon, but I also used a lot of lines to indicate contour. So here in the face, I indicated shading with lines, and you can see that the lines follow the contour of the face. If the nose goes down, the crayon went down as well. And it's interesting to draw this way. You have to think it through a little bit. In the shading, I just used darker tones, and I think I added another color in there as well. The texture of the coat is just marks. So I made different colored marks. One's blue and one's brown. And again, the lips, just a hint of color there. And we're not, again, being terribly literal, and yet we do get a real feeling for the person without it being labored or overly complicated. So I'll show you one more drawing. In this one, I started with a blue colored pencil, and I drew the whole person in with the blue colored pencil. You can see all the hair, the lines of the nose, the lines, the contour of his face, his turtleneck, and so on. We're all done with pencil. Now, colored pencil is a finer material, utensil, or whatever you want to call it, to render things with. You can get more detail, finer detail. And in this case, I wanted to add a little bit of skin tone and shading in the interior of his face, without, again, being terribly labored or literal. So we don't need to color in the whole face. I left that to be just the color of the paper, but I indicated the flesh tones on the outside. And as we go closer to the perimeter of his face, I layered colors of the colored pencils. So there's a little brown over the flesh color, and then I've put the cheek color as a little heightened with some red. Here, the deeper shadow is with the blue, brown, and the flesh color, and the same down here. So when you're thinking about this kind of thing, you just want to think about consistency, that you're doing the whole thing in the same way. If you're using brown and blue for shading, then do it throughout. And if the shadows are deeper, you can press harder and get a more rich tone from your colored pencil. The same thing happened up here. I used the blue line to indicate the lines of the hair, but I did in the background some just shaded colored pencil like that. And then I deepened the tone down here where it's more in the shadow. So these simple ways can help us, simple techniques can help us do a drawing that's clean, but also we don't get so caught up in all the details that we lose our way. We want to always try to keep the big picture in mind. There are a lot of details in anything that we draw, but we want to simplify, and all drawing is a stylization. So you want to try to simplify and pick out what you feel is most interesting, and allow yourself to explore that.
Okay, I'm going to come back for a final few words.
Hi, I hope you enjoyed the videos and that you're finding them helpful. I want to leave you with 3 tips. The first is, I hope you will develop a daily practice of drawing. It really does help for building skills and visual thinking. You'll get a lot of ideas if you keep showing up day after day. And it also builds a lot of fluidity and confidence in your hand. Secondly, I hope you're going to realize, if you haven't already, that mistakes are fantastic. We don't really find things out until we go over the edge. So do, even consciously, try to exaggerate, push things too far, your line, color, the tone, light and dark. Just see what happens if you go too far in any one direction. I think in doing that, we really find our own voice, our own way of working, what really interests us. So mistakes are to be cultivated, and we can learn a lot from them. And finally, try to cultivate a very positive mental attitude. Let's really appreciate ourselves for what we do and appreciate the good in our work, because there's always good in it. So look for what's good, what really lights you up, and let's do more of that. And I think when we do that, we start seeing things in the world as well that are good, and it's all around us. So I think art is a fantastic training ground for that. So thank you very much for being here, and I look forward to seeing you soon when the Mosesian Center for the Arts opens again for classes.